So this next section is on Aristotle, another ancient Greek philosopher. Uh, the chapter right after the one on Plato deals with Aristotle, and that's very fitting because Aristotle was a student of Plato, and he was uh, the greatest student of Plato. Um, so let's see about Aristotle. So he lived between 384 and 322 BCE. Oh, what was Aristotle? Born in Stagira, I suppose, a Greek community in Thrace. He was the son of a court physician. So he was not a commoner. He was among the elite, like Plato. um, and our knowledge of Aristotle doesn't come from Plato, but it comes mainly from the writings of Diogenes of Laertius, who is not to be confused with the famous Cynic philosopher Diogenes of Sinope or Sinope or something. Uh, the one who went around and lived in a tub or a barrel, depending on whom you read. But Diogenes of Laertius also wrote about Diogenes of Sinope. Anyway, at 18, Aristotle went to study at Plato's Academy in Athens. And unlike most of the students there, he dressed fashionably and he adopted the speech of an even higher echelon of Greek society. So he affected a lisp, which is how that was spoken. I can't do a lisp in ancient Greek, so forgive me. And Plato thought he paid too much attention to his appearance and general impression uh, that he made for a philosopher. But he quickly distinguished himself as one of Plato's finest students. And he would hang out with Plato after the lecture and discuss um, deep things with him. Although he did disagree on some points with Plato, um, he did admire Plato as Plato admired Socrates, and he built an altar to Plato after Plato's death. Now, I'm not sure if that altar is a big building or, I mean, relatively big, like you could walk into it, or if it's a small thing. But what is Aristotle's philosophy like? Well, he based his thought on the scientific method of his time, and he declared there was only one world. So remember, Plato was a dualist. He believed there was the world of matter, the physical world, and then there was also another world that was where the forms existed, and that was kind of a higher world. And so Aristotle disagreed with Plato on this, and he said there's only one world. Um, and he denied the existence of a specifically supernatural realm. And this declaration of one non-supernatural world uh, puts him under the heading of a naturalist. This is not to be confused with a naturalist as somebody like John Muir or David Attenborough, who studies, plants and animals. Although Aristotle did write about plants and animals, but um, So telos or telos. Aristotle believed that the universe had a purpose of its own and that this was not a divine purpose as we would think of it today. It's almost like the purpose that I would have if I decided to go to the store. Like that would be my purpose for the next 20 minutes. Um, but the universe had a purpose and everything in it had its own purpose. Like a bird would have a purpose and a flute would have a purpose. Somebody who played the flute would have a purpose. And this is like what or whom they're supposed to be. Just naturally, there's this tendency toward becoming a certain thing and behaving in a certain way, almost like an intelligence. So, um, remember that Plato thought there was being and there was becoming, and the world of matter was a world of becoming, and the world of the forms was a world of being. Now, the world of being was unchanging, whereas the world of becoming was changing, and only the unchanging was true. So, the world of physics, the world of sticks and stones and broken bones was not the true world. It was not, there were learning facts about the world of matter was not learning truth for Plato. But Aristotle, believing in one world, had an explanation for change. He believed that there was hylomorphism, which I had to look up, frankly. And it's a doctrine that corporeal beings consist of a combination of Aristotelian forms and primordial matter. You got that from the Merriam-Webster dictionary online. And so we see the word forms. Um, so we do have that connection between Plato and Aristotle, where they both talk about forms. But for Aristotle, matter and form were sort of stuck together in this one world that we live in. And the forms were not far off in another higher world. Let's talk about causation briefly. Um, now, for Plato, causation was not really that much of a concern because Plato was concerned with the truth of the forms more than he was things like physics and things having to do with the material world. But for Aristotle, there were four kinds of causes. Now, a thing like a sculpture would have these four causes. It would have a material cause. That would be the marble the sculpture was made from. It's the thing's substance, the physical substance that can undergo change. There was the formal cause, and that's not having to do so much with a form as the essence of the sculpture, but um, the shape or the form into which a thing is changed. So, form in a more common use of the word. And there's the efficient cause, a thing's triggering cause, and it's what sets the change into motion. So if we have a billiard table, say we have pool balls, we're playing eight ball or pool or billiards or nine ball or whatever we're playing, and we hit a ball and it hits another ball. Well, there's an efficient cause there, like Newtonian mechanics, where one ball hits the other ball and sets the other ball in motion. And so that's the efficient cause. It's very much like a Newtonian physical cause where there's no intelligence um, um, involved in the cause. It's just uh, what actually makes it happen. Uh, like if I cut a tree down, my sawing the tree or chopping it with an axe would be the efficient cause of the tree becoming a tree fallen on the ground. And there's the final cause. So it's the thing's telos or final goal. Um, I'm not that versed in exactly what specific um final goals Aristotle had for everyday things like a tree or uh we could say the final goal of that marble was to become a statue or a sculpture or a bust of a person. Um, the final cause, there's a final goal of the tree to grow up into a strong tree, but maybe the final goal of say a lumberjack or whatever the equivalent was in ancient Greece, say a carpenter, the final goal of that tree was to become wood uh, for the carpenter's use. So we have idea, the reason for something's happening, its cause, and that's a word that's just good to know, having to do with these four causes. And entelechy, the view that things happen because of natural design. So this is not to be confused with the today's discussions of, or really 2 decades ago, more so, discussion of, say, intelligent design and irreducible complexity. It's not that. It's that this wholly profane world, if you will. It's not a holy thing happening here. We have just a natural world with no overseeing intelligence, but there is a purpose and there's a natural design, I guess, as if there were an intelligence. And so things happen because of this natural design with purposes and goals and ways to achieve those goals um, for the world and for lumberjacks and for sculptors and marble. So there are some regrettable things about many of the philosophers that we can study in Western philosophy. And Plato is no exception. I mean, I'm sorry, Aristotle is no exception. He believed only free male Athenians were fully human. I mean, let that sink in. Fully human. So, like, but basically, ancient Greek slaves would be some kind of labor animal in his view. And he believed that different humans were better suited to different purposes. So some humans were better suited to be slaves than to be philosophers. And to be a philosopher was the highest thing a person could be. And but some people just were not the sort of people, you might say, who had it in them to become philosophers. And there was a hierarchy of these people. There are higher types and lower types. Um, and I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say that we're talking about better versus inferior in this view. Uh, so, we're talking about thousands of years ago. So, how do we look at that today and pull whatever might be worth saving out of Aristotle's thought and leave the dross, leave the nastiness that just came along with that period in history for the most part. And as I said, there are many philosophers in the Western canon who have these things about them, whether it's things they believed or things they did, that are unseemly to us. Maybe we would even say they were evil. Um, and these debates happen among academic philosophers, and some academic philosophers will say, this philosopher is not even uh, should not even be studied or referred to because they were so bad. Um, so as we go along, I think we'll have some chances at least to further consider how we extract the good from the whole. How do we get rid of the bad? How do we ignore it? How do we accept it as fact and yet accept that philosopher was a great philosopher and had important things to say that are still important to be talked about today? All right, so that's what I have about Aristotle. There's a lot more in the book, and I hope that you enjoy learning about Aristotle. So thank you.